Greetings, members one and all of the Salivation Nation. They create debt while we preserve wealth. That's the topic of today's video, and it is a polarizing situation by the very nature, because we are separating ourselves into two different classes of people. Those of us who preserve wealth and those who create debt. While at the same time, many of us in Western nations and even many nations, other nations around the world, we have to incur some debt in order to survive or make our way in this world. But there is a difference still, because I believe that the two classes of people, us versus them, it's about a mindset. It's about a paradigm shift in thinking. And that's where these two metals come into play, gold and silver. Yes, indeed. And I'm showing you examples of United States mint-produced gold and silver products because America is really the biggest culprit and the biggest offender when it comes to creating debt. Our nation has the largest debt in the world, sanctified by government spending. But also, the public in the United States is not far behind. You know, our national debt here in America, as a nation, in the form of government spending, has $21 trillion in debt. And who knows about unfunded liabilities and other derivatives that are out there that could make it much worse. But as far as a people in the United States, we're not that far behind. We have a record high of $13.5 trillion in debt. That's $837 billion higher than its previous peak in 2008, which was before the recession. Now, you have to keep in mind that that's probably not adjusted for inflation. Considering the dollar has lost a great amount of value since then. Gold and silver prices were much lower back then. But regardless, we keep on stacking up debt. And in some ways, that is, in a sense, contributing to the economy as people are spending money. It's obviously providing some stimulus. But nonetheless, it's stimulus based off of debt. Now, when the government does it, it's not nearly as real as when you and I do it, because we're doing it on dollars that must be and will be paid back in some manner or form. You know, the United States government itself, cannot even pay the interest on the debt, much less paying it down. We keep deficit spending every year, and anytime there's a decrease in deficit spending, we're still in deficit spending. They celebrate that with what's known, and with baseline budgeting and the like. They can really play with the numbers to make it seem like that they are being fiscally responsible. But how dare us criticize the government for being fiscally responsible when we ourselves as a nation, or the Western world in general, are not being fiscally responsible. And that's where we are headed now, is personal debt is going way up. And let's kind of analyze this debt a bit and see exactly what it comprises of. The total debt balance, in its different forms, can take the place. Most of it is in mortgages, and that's understandable that the mortgages would be high and make up the largest amount of debt. But many times, many people, they buy outside of their means, and they incur a debt per month that they really can't afford or shouldn't afford. They say a third of your income should go towards your mortgage. And a lot of people are pushing the limits of that and increasing maybe half their income, buying outside of their means there, because there's nothing wrong with some debt. I have a mortgage on my home. I'm sure many of you do as well. For those of us that are in the middle income brackets, there's other people out there who have a who have more money, and they can buy homes outright and just pay for them. And I think that's wonderful. If you can do that without incurring any debt, it also limits you because you're going to be getting a home that you can afford, that you know you can afford, that you can buy with the money right out front. In a way, I think that's wonderful. People can do that, and they don't have to carry a mortgage for sure. The next highest thing is nowadays is student debt. And that is awful. For those of you young folks, I know there's some of the community that are going to college and paying for college. And, and education is extremely important. But more so now today, as expensive as students, as colleges are, and whether or not they're state schools or private schools, the price difference between the two is not as great as it once was. They're both very expensive. You're not getting what you're paying for, that's for sure. In fact, I would argue you're getting more indoctrination than you are in education these days. And all of the different types of schools and colleges out there, and how bloated their budgets are, tenure with these professors, big money being spent in these schools. Some of these colleges are literally taking over the towns and cities from which they reside, buying up land that can't be taxed, and it's just gotten out of hand. I think the education system in this country, especially the collegiate level, has gone out of hand. The cost is just astronomical. Many people are better off going to trade schools or specialty education for what they want to do, in my opinion, than all of the other money that's paid. At the time a student gets out of college, it'll take them 10, 20 years to pay off that loan, and they're living on ramen noodles and the like. I know I've self-funded my entire education, and it was not easy to do it. But I learned more on the work in the workforce than I ever did in college. No question about it. And I work in a somewhat technical field. The other aspect is auto loans, and they're rising as well too. People are buying fancy new cars, and the minute you drive that car off the lot, you've lost a great amount of its value. These precious metals, well, some people argue, well, they've lost a lot of value too. But I would beg to differ, because if you look at the value in terms compared to price, yes, they've lost some money since their high in 2011. But that's picking one date of a high, a strange anomaly that's only happened in this century. Really, only one other, well, in the last 100 years, twice. In 1980, they went sky high and then came back down. And in 2011, they went sky high and came back down. They were overvalued at the time for a myriad of reasons. But nonetheless, the value of these metals is constant. And it is a way, a snapshot to preserve your wealth. Because if you look at a 100-year chart for these metals, there's proof, an example to see how they preserve the wealth in that time. And even other snapshots in time within that 100 years. And that's the key here, is understanding wealth and preserving it, so that when we buy these precious metals, we know that we're always protected by the intrinsic value contained therein. And that is what keeps us going. And we can enjoy these precious metals as well as accumulate them. You know, when you buy a fancy new phone, now the latest iPhones and Androids, are running upwards of $1,000 for these things. And you pay for them through plans and the like. And yes, they're nice. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't accumulate them and acquire them or what have you. But understand that that when you do have those things, the latest and greatest, they're going to be losing not only price but also value in a very short amount of time. That doesn't happen with gold or silver. These things will hold on and maintain throughout history, as they have for thousands of years. They'll hold on to their value. And so really, no matter how you collect or stack, if gold and silver is involved, you are preserving your wealth in one form or another. Whether or not it be some high premium coin, as long as you understand what you're doing when you make a purchase, and you realize that, some of those premiums you may not recapture, you're always going to be protected by the intrinsic value. And celebrate that, understand it, and enjoy it, and as you accumulate these metals. And that's really part of what it's about. It's about the enjoyment of holding these things and appreciating the different designs and artwork involved in these pieces. But the metals that serve as the foundation, gold and silver, they will continue to press on no matter what happens in the world, no matter how much the government or the culture or what have you would like to frown upon these metals. They will last. They will endure. They're tough. They are fungible. They will never go away. They will never disappear. You can't destroy them. No matter what you do, they will press on. And for those of us who hold these metals, we will press on. And we will always be protected. And we will always be independent of the system of debt, because we are preservers of our own wealth. And as we do accumulate these metals, understand this important fact that we are in two different worlds here. And we should always be careful not to overspend, not to overextend ourselves no matter what. So a good way to accumulate these metals, if you're a collector, it's a little different form. But if you're a stacker, a pure stacker, I would encourage you to not put more than 10 to 20% tops into these metals because of some of the volatility. But understanding that no matter how much percentage you put in these, you are going to be preserved. You're going to be preserving an amount of wealth that you're not going to see in many other asset classes out there. Real estate, there's some people in this community who do invest in real estate, and that's part of what we're talking about with these mortgages. They may take on other mortgage to be able to make money off of real estate and things like that, but those are investments. And there's nothing wrong with investing, and the same thing with the stock market. There's nothing wrong with investing in the stock market, cryptos, whatever else you have, but just do it within your means. In this community, we have a lot of savvy people who have made a lot of money, who have been very successful. And with some of that success, they have preserved their wealth with gold and silver. But they're making some money utilizing other aspects of either banking or real estate or what have you. And I hope you understand that I'm not coming down or criticizing people who have been successful in life utilizing some of the instruments of debt, because really, in a sense, it's up to the individual to be careful with how they do things and how they accumulate debt. And it's also the responsibility of the government and others to help to keep that under control with their spending and the like. There's a lot of debt out there. There's not as much of this stuff, of gold and silver. And so I would encourage us, if we can afford to do so, to continue to press on and accumulate more of the gold and silver products. And because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. The dollar could lose a lot of its value. There's a threat that it could be that it's under threat as a world's reserve currency. Nations are trying to become independent of the dollar as that reserve currency. They feel strapped by it. I think that's why you're seeing many nations around the world and their central banks accumulate more gold. And so you just never know what the future holds. But one thing we know from the past is that gold and silver are preservers of wealth. They will never go away no matter what. So I hope this video was an encouragement to you. And I would like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for watching and encourage you to please rate, comment, and subscribe.